Nipsey Hussle was many things. He was a prolific artist who practiced patience, perseverance, and consistency. He was a believer not only in himself, but in his community. He was a family man who took care of his woman, his children, but also looked out for the youth growing up around him who lacked opportunity. Nipsey was a businessman who practiced ownership and changed the way that we all look at marketing, branding, and independent artists forever. But above all, Nipsey Hussle was a man of integrity. He was someone with strong morals and someone who was willing to dedicate his life to make the lives of those around him better. In this video, we're gonna take a look back at that beautiful life and the legacy that he left here on this earth. We hope his life can teach you something or inspire you in some way to leave your mark on this world. So here are some lessons that we learned from Nipsey's life. Ownership over everything else. If you go back and watch some of the oldest Nipsey Hussle interviews you can find, before the beard and before the cornrows, you'll find a young Nip speaking in a manner that's wise beyond his years.
Invest in some assets as opposed to trick off my money on some liabilities like diamonds. You know what I'm saying? Cars that lose value, you drive them off the lot.
So you're trying to get land.
Exactly, homie. A real asset. Take care of my peoples, because you know it look good, but at the end of the day, you losing value, homie.
Even back then, Nipsey knew the future he wanted for himself and for his community. He wasn't as interested in ice or cars. He wanted to buy property and be able to build something of his own. Nipsey wasn't just talk either. He practiced what he preached. Nip started out hustling in the streets of LA and acquired wealth for himself long before he stepped foot in a recording booth. When you hear Nipsey talk about not needing the cars or the jewelry, he lived that truth. But he also knew that he wanted more from his life than instant gratification. He wanted longevity. In fact, at one point, Nipsey recalls selling all his cars and jewelry while only spending $20 a day just so that he could invest the rest of his money back into his music. Nipsey bought studio equipment so that he could record himself and learn how to engineer his projects. For Nipsey, this was early ownership and not having to rely on anyone else for his product. After building up some local LA buzz, instead of trying to sign with a major label right off the bat, Nipsey created his own record label called Slauson Boys Records. Nipsey took ownership one step further when he started his own clothing store using his Crenshaw brand to help create something positive within his community. The store and the brand grew into something far bigger than Nipsey as an artist. It became a staple within the LA community. And Nipsey wasn't satisfied with just selling clothing. Like he said in that early interview, he wanted to own land. So recently, Nipsey bought back his block. He bought the entire plaza on Slauson and Crenshaw with the goal of reigniting the same neighborhood that raised him and bringing ownership to his people. From Nipsey, we learn to think bigger and not just focus on instant gratification. It isn't until you own that you can be on your own. With enough perseverance, you'll reach your finish line.
When I was young, probably in the 6th grade, you know what I mean, I started recording music, learning production and all that, learning how to connect equipment, how to work a studio from all aspects, like the creative end and the technical end, you know what I mean? So it just made shit easier for me when it was time to do my projects, because my engineer was bullshitting with me or acting like he was doing something that was like rocket science. I just tell him, watch out, my nigga, I'll handle it, you feel me?
Unlike a lot of new acts today who blow up off of one song, Nipsey Hussle's career is a story of true patience and perseverance. When Nipsey was 13 years old, his mother signed him up for music classes at the Watts Towers in LA, where they were offering free classes to teach kids the basics of recording. From there, Nipsey was able to learn the skills he needed to engineer his own records. Nipsey would listen to Dre and Snoop records and rap his own verses over theirs. It was a few years later that Nipsey began taking things seriously with music. His original goal with music was to give people an update on the LA sound to fill in the time gap between Snoop and Dre's original work and show what LA looked like for someone growing up Nip's age.
1970-something to like 1990-something. That's the part of LA, that's the era of LA that's being represented. Now from the 90s on to right now, ain't been spoke on. I'm born in 85, my nigga, you feel me? I was growing up from 85 to right now. So if I come out rapping like Snoop and Dre and them niggas talking about palm trees and Lolos and house parties, that ain't the case. Cause we can't even have a party. The police hopping out in paddy wagons, locking niggas up for associating with each other, for having cell phones on, for having white t-shirts on, for having tattoos.
After selling all his jewelry and cars, he bought Pro Tools, an Apple computer, and studio equipment where he could work on his music every single day. Nipsey released his first mixtape, Slauson Boys Volume 1, and began to gain some local buzz. But just after he started to make a name for himself, his studio was raided and he lost all of his equipment, having to start from scratch once again. What did Nipsey do? He persevered. Nipsey was listed as a XXL freshman alongside J. Cole and Wiz, but unlike his peers, he didn't reach the next level of success shortly after that cover. It was only the beginning of his long grind to the top. Nipsey landed himself a deal with Cinematic Music Group through Sony and Epic Records. But at the same time, he was facing pending legal trouble and had to spend his label advance money on a lawyer. More obstacles. After a couple of mixtapes and singles that ultimately didn't push Nipsey to the next level, his record deal eventually fell through due to creative differences, and he would choose to go back to being an independent artist. Once again, Nipsey persevered.
Streets love me cause they know I got cracking in them. Took a stand, never ran and got gaffled in them. Bailed out with block money, kept trapping, and I took this rap game and put some real nigga passion in it.
Nipsey was able to build connections with the LA scene off of genuine mutual respect from some of the West Coast's biggest names. Snoop put Nipsey on his album, and The Game took him out on tour.
Take the corner, take the city, not even the city, take the hood, then the city. Not even the city after the hood, then the side, the west side, then the whole city.
After continuously flooding the people with music and becoming one of LA's most prominent voices, Nipsey began to talk about the release of his third mixtape in his marathon series, Victory Lap. But due to constant pushbacks and dealing with his own personal issues, Nipsey decided to wait on that album. Even though everything kept falling apart, Nipsey believed in the process and kept picking up the pieces. You determine your own worth. Instead of dropping Victory Lap, in 2013, Nipsey decided to drop a project called Crenshaw. This project was revolutionary for the music business. Not only was Nipsey dropping the project independently, but he was charging $100 for the project. The signed album came packaged with merch, meet and greets, and an exclusive concert. But still, people called Nip crazy and said that no one was going to pay that for an album. They were wrong. Nipsey sold all 1,000 copies of the album within 24 hours, making 100 grand in a day. 100 of those copies were bought by Jay-Z.
Jay a real nigga, you know what I'm saying? So I just feel like, you know, it's like if I see a young nigga selling candy, you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna go buy the box. That's what I do, you know what I mean? Cause I respect your hustle.
Hov saw Nipsey's business acumen and wanted to support someone creating ownership their own way. And to bring it back to ownership, Nipsey used that $100K and invested it back into his record label, All Money In. Nipsey showed us that your value is only as much as your self-belief. If you say your album should be worth $100 and you truly believe in yourself, then the people who believe in you will follow. But even before that, Nipsey was always ahead of the game in terms of valuing his work. He was early on the wave of creating mixtapes that were bodies of work rather than just freestyles thrown together. In fact, he was one of the first people to charge money for a mixtape with Bullets Ain't Got No Name Volume 3. Timing is everything. A lot of people in Nipsey's situation would have dropped Victory Lap years before 2018. Nipsey had been talking about it since years prior, and it would have been easy for him to release it as a free mixtape or put it out before he was ready due to fan pressure. But Nipsey believed in a bigger plan and knew that in a marathon, it's about your pace and not how fast you can sprint out the gate. So Nipsey patiently waited and plotted until he was able to build up a strong enough platform on his own that when he was ready for the album release, he was able to use all of the resources necessary and was able to do things on his own terms. In November of 2017, Nipsey announced that he'll be partnering with Atlantic Records for the release of his long-awaited debut album, Victory Lap. And Nipsey's sense of timing was impeccable. Everything worked out perfectly. The singles from the album built the buzz, and when the album finally dropped, it was so well received by fans and critics alike that most people had it on their Rap Album of the Year lists. The album was even nominated for Rap Album of the Year at the Grammys.
We're here celebrating Victory Lap.
I'm so excited for you. So if you hear your name tonight, what happens? Do you stand up and scream? What happens?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, I'm going to go thank God, I'm going to thank my team, and then let the rest flow from the heart.
You don't win unless your people win too. What made Nipsey Hussle's death so tragic is the fact that his impact was cut short. The path that he was on to help those around him undoubtedly had a lot more yet to be paved. Nipsey was a man who cared deeply about the mindset and opportunity of his community. Along with the Marathon clothing store and buying back his block, he was passionate about giving kids within his community the opportunity to learn STEM, and recently opened a co-working space and STEM center in the Crenshaw district to give children the tools and resources they need to work in Silicon Valley. Knowing how much more he wanted to do hurts, but looking at how much he accomplished and all of the lives that he touched continues to inspire. We wanted to make sure that we keep his legacy alive and share some of the lessons that we learned from his life and career. The marathon continues through us and the culture. If anyone close to him is watching right now, our hearts are with you and our prayers are being sent up for you. So what did you learn from Nipsey? And what's your favorite memory relating to the LA legend? Make sure you let us know in the comments below. For Hip Hop DX, I'm Trust, and let's keep Nipsey's legacy alive. Rest in power, Nipsey Hussle.